Hey guys, Doc here, and I just wanted to go over two different camera mounts that I use on my kayak and the applications that I have for each one of them. Today we will be reviewing price points of each one of these, different specs on them, advantages, disadvantages, and the reason why I use each one for the application that I use it for. As always, if you like the video, hit that like button. If you enjoy my style of content, go ahead and subscribe to my pages or follow my pages. I would greatly appreciate all of that. The first of the two action camera mounts that I will be reviewing today is the YakAttack Boomstick Pro. Comes in at 51.5 inches in length. Is designed to float with these two foam pads. Has the adjustable ball style mount. Allows you to get a whole bunch of different angles. And comes with that lock and load base that is pretty standard on most YakAttack products. The YakAttack Boomstick Pro comes in at about $100 depending on which retailer you go to. And I do think that this mount has some built-in value into that $100. Again, it has that lock and load base, so any other YakAttack mount that you have, you can move this pole to that spot on your kayak. You don't have to get additional mounts if you don't want to. It does come with that mount there, comes with the ball head, which has that action camera mount on the top of it. A sneaky part of the value that I think is very important is these foam pads, which help this mount to float, which obviously comes in handy sometimes on the water. Things happen, poles get knocked off into the water. Gives you a couple extra seconds to grab your action camera before it's gone for good. Advantages of this mount, I already kind of hit on it in the price point section. Foam pads helping it float, adjustable ball mount at the top, lock and load base style that, again, you can mount anywhere on your kayak, any T-track that you have. And that leads into some items that I think are disadvantages to this pole. The lock and load mount system, it is nice as a proprietary system, but it's also not the most stable thing in the world. You get something that's a little bit heavier. Your base wobbles the whole time that you're using anything on it while you're out on the water and you're moving. And the other thing that I almost think is a disadvantage is the actual length of this pole. That leads to the increased sway that you have with this mount while you're on the kayak, again using that lock and load base with the single track mount. And that to me leads to some content that I would almost feel is unusable just because everything is shaking around the whole time. I mean, obviously you get an epic catch, you're gonna post that anyway. But sometimes, you know, if you're going for that B-roll footage, or say you're at a little bit higher level in the game and you're out there as a professional content creator and professional angler, having that wobbly content just looks sloppy. It's something that I really wish they would try to work on as far as this particular mount goes. I like this particular mount for my rear camera. It gives you that nice, classic, over-the-shoulder view that has been a staple of the kayak fishing game for years. It's just something that a lot of viewers are used to seeing. Another thing that I have liked to use this mount for in the past is that classic vlogging view. You're walking around, this gives you a nice long handle, so again you can get a lot more of that background scene as you're walking around talking, you know, getting prepped for a tournament, or you're doing a recap at the end of the day. So I just wanted to go over the two different bases that I was going to put the Boomstick Pro on. This is the original single track lock and load base from YakAttack. And then this is that HD base system with the two separate track attachment points. Okay, so I wanted to return to that YakAttack Boomstick Pro. I have two separate mounts here. I have the original lock and load base, and then I have the heavy duty lock and load base up here just so I could show you some subtle differences in the movement of this pole while it is on the two separate mounts. So classic lock and load system, you pop open the little latch, slide that on top of there, close your latch. Now your action camera pole is mounted. So this is the HD base, the heavy duty base. A little bit of sway, nothing too bad though. It dampens pretty quickly just because of that more sturdy base with that HD attachment system. While it is up here on this lock and load base, I will show you how you can move this pole around. You simply pull in on that little lever system and you can spin this pole around relatively easily. The only thing that I think is difficult while you're out on the water, you're sitting there, so you're reaching behind you at a little bit of an awkward angle. It's not the most easy system to move with one hand while you're actively using your kayak. Sitting here in the garage is pretty easy because I can use two hands, not a problem. So we're going to take it off of that heavy duty base, put it on the single track attachment base from YakAttack with that lock and load system. And as you can see, increased sway there, and it takes a little bit longer for it to dampen down. So that's what I was alluding to earlier when I talked about that wobbly footage. A lot of people had still been using that classic single track attachment base from YakAttack. If I had to choose between these two bases, I would choose the HD base simply because of that second attachment point, which improves the stability and reduces that wobbly effect while you're on the water. All right, so that is a quick review of the YakAttack Boomstick Pro. Let's go ahead and talk about that other camera mount. All right, so next mount that we're going to talk about is the Ram Mounts Tough Pole. I have the 24-inch version, and I will explain why I prefer the shorter version here in a minute. So let's talk about specs of this particular camera mount. Again, we have that ball adjustment system at the top. It does have a base with a locking mechanism that I will show in a minute. And there are two different lengths to this particular mount. I have the 24-inch version, and there also is a 48-inch version to the same mount, which essentially is just a double pole version. The current version that I have in my hand on Ram's website is listed at $84.99. The 48-inch version is listed at about $110. I know that I caught these on sale because I ended up buying 2 or 3 of them at once, and I know I didn't spend $85 a piece on this particular mount. Advantages of this style of mount, I think that the size of this one is a huge advantage, just because I like to run this one as my front camera mount. I think that having the little bit shorter arm allows the camera to sit a little bit more stable while it's at the front of my kayak. Another advantage of this particular camera mount is the insert for the track mounted system. It allows for this arm to spin around freely, can do a full 360, and it allows you to move the camera out of your way extremely easily or change your batteries out if you're like me and run batteries in your action cameras versus doing an external battery source. Applications for this shorter mount, I mentioned it. I prefer to have this one as my front camera mount. I just think that with the wide angle lenses of all of these action cameras that are out, you don't need to have an extremely long pole for your front camera mount, depending on the kayak that you're in. That wide angle lens of the action camera captures everything, including you, including some of the scenery behind you as you're sitting on your kayak. You don't need to have that extremely long arm because then I feel like it distorts the entire image and everything just looks funny. One more application that I like this shorter arm for with that spinning mount is when I am fishing areas of heavy cover or if I'm fishing underneath trees. This is something that I can spin around and move around very easily. It's not cumbersome. It's something that if I'm quickly coming up on a tree, I can swing this thing out of the way so I'm not catching it on branches while I'm going through. Also, while I'm fishing in those kinds of areas, I'm doing a lot of skipping, maybe some pitching. So I can swing this camera out of the way so I don't hit it with my rod as I'm going through on my casts. So here is the mounting system for that Ram Mounts Tough Pole. 2 track attachments and then the insert on the top. Go ahead, place down into that insert. Now your camera mount is active. Very easy to spin that around so you can get a whole bunch of different views. And I like to have mine sitting right in the middle for that centralized view for my front camera. Again, I run a 360 camera on the front of my Kayak, and the length of this pole sits perfectly right over top of my hatch. It's not too far extended where I have to worry about hitting that camera on anything that's in front of me, as I like to fish right up in the thick of things. And again, while you're on the water, I like to run batteries inside of my action cameras. So this is something that I can very easily spin around. Sitting in the seat right there, I can go ahead, pop my camera off of there, change my battery, pop it back on there, spin it around. Takes me no more than 20-30 seconds while I'm out on the water. So that is a quick review of these two different camera mounts. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else you'd like me to talk about in the comments below. If you enjoyed this style of content, again, please follow my pages, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and as always, today is a good day to have a good day.